Hello and welcome to another series of Finding Your Atom, where with Amrita Sen, we discuss together how we can actually look at, I would say, finding equilibrium, sustainable happiness, and how to work with learning from the physical and the spiritual, and as well how we can create sustainable happiness. This series between me and Amrita have been going for some time, and I'm more and more excited because this, for me, on the personal level, balance is particularly important. But I think for everyone listening to us, we have very different guests, and we try always to look at the matter, the ordinary matter that forms the chemical element of what is being human, and as well what makes us special. And today is actually quite an interesting I would say, episode where we're going to have a special guest, Andrew Woods, that is going to be talking about the balance between the physical and the mental, and as well a concept, again, fantastic, that I love from Amrita, and that you're going to be talking today with Andrew, that is identifying your core. So just a bit of a couple notes about Andrew, and we're going to put the bio and the information. So Andrew has dedicated himself to the world of boxing, fitness, and healthcare through both education, instructions, and as well inspiring communities. He has over a decade of working with multiple projects, from initially working in terms of Broadway boxing gym and the American Boxing Association as a coach, while continuing his education in the world history and kinesiology at Polytechnic University, Pomona. And their Andrew achievements also include training amateur boxing, but as well, I would say that one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in is the work he's been doing in terms of education and social impact close to communities in LA, and as well working in creating ideas of inspiring and changing cultures between the physical and the mental. So pass the word to you, Amrita. I know that it's a very special episode for you, and I think you have a lot of wonderful things to talk with Andrew.
Thank you so much, Dinis, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Andrew Wood. Andrew is a celebrity trainer that he very humbly keeps out of his bio, but he trains very, very famous people. And I met him in that context of working with well-known celebrities who go from basically having lack of strength, right, to having very sustainable, strong bodies. And I've seen Andrew do this repeatedly. We're going to cover a lot of concepts today, but to try to get to know Andrew's philosophy better, I thought let's start with some basic fitness concepts that he has carried with him through the world of boxing, through the world of cardio, through the world of just even healing patients who have serious orthopedic injuries, right? So the first concept we're going to talk about, Andrew, if you will, is the concept of the plateau, right? You and I have experienced what a physical plateau is. I'd like you to talk about that. And I'd also like you to kind of segue into how that is related to a mental plateau. So what is a plateau? I think once everybody hears the definition, we've all been there.
Understood. And thank you for having me, both of you. It's an honor, privilege to be here. Let's start with plateau. I want you to visualize a wall. It's the only thing I can actually best describe a plateau. It's generally a wall, a physical or mental, even a spiritual wall that you're more than likely going to run into or find yourself facing once you decide. It's more so, I'm trying to take it to the next level. So in order to get to the next level, you have to go through these segues or periods of plateauing, or a wall, if you want, so to speak, just to get an idea of, all right, what do I need to do next? Plateauing is a good thing. I don't try to encourage people to take plateauing as a negative thing. It's generally just your body or your mind or your spirit saying, okay, now we've surpassed the first level. How do we get to the next level? But there has to be a stopping mechanism or a yield mechanism or a wall to give the individual an idea of, all right, phase one, this is phase two. A lot of times people plateau and they go into a wall and they end up breaking through the wall and hurting themselves without actually visualizing or understanding why am I plateauing? Why is the wall even here? So it's a good thing in my world.
So in very basic fitness terms, imagine you having to lose a lot of water weight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You lose a lot of water weight, you lose the pounds, or the physical fat on your body. But then once you're skinny, you could be something called skinny fat, right? Is that and I've now heard many women talk about this concept of skinny fat. Isn't that a time when injuries are most common during this transition? Between okay, I've lost the weight and now I want to start lifting weights. What happens at that point from what you've seen in patients?
Particularly when I'm dealing with, let's start with the general client who wants to lose weight. When I talk to Amrita about weight, a lot of people don't understand physiologically what weight comprises of. So I tell people there's 4 levels of weight. When you're asking, or when a client asks me, Andrew, I want to lose some weight, I usually ask them, what kind of weight do you want to lose? And it's usually this perplexion of, what do you mean, what kind of weight? So I said, okay, let's go into the layers. Let's cut down these layers of what weight actually is. It's generally 4 layers, all right? We'll start at the top, meaning skin and tissue, right? Second layer, subcutaneous fluid, or we call it water weight. Third layer is your fat. Fourth layer is your muscle. So if I were to peel off every area or level of your body, or weight as we call it, and I put it on a scale, it would weigh something. This is all based upon the matter. Yes. Now, when we go into the skinny fat situation, it's a lot of people who lose a lot of water weight and they lose a little bit of fat and they don't have any muscle. So they have that straight, narrow, thin look with no tone, no shape. So I try to encourage people, if you want shape or you want to tone your body, it's the art of bringing up the bottom layer, which is the muscle, all the way through the top layer to the tissue. So it actually has some form of a shape. When there's no shape, there's this flat look. You're just holding on to the skin and holding on a little bit of fat and a little bit of water. So I tell the clients to really start digging deeper in regards to what kind of weight are you actually trying to lose. So most people will have this miseducation of actually training the body properly to build the muscle to actually hold any shape, any type of shape or definition, if you want to call it. Symmetry is what we call it sometimes in the fitness world. So when you're miseducated about how the body is representative in those particular 4 layers, people just start to run, eat the wrong kinds of foods, don't take no rest, don't take the proper type of supplements. Then injury comes because they don't have the understanding of, look, if you dissipate or you try to manipulate each layer of the body and comprised of weight, you're going to run into some type of harm or injury to the body. It takes time, it takes education, it takes expertise, and more importantly, it takes a lot of skill to be able to manipulate the body and what you want to manipulate it in to get the shape that you're looking for. But it starts with the foundation, education first. Understand your body type, understand your blood type, understand this is not going to be an easy feat. So let me not rush into something just because, I want a microwave. I want a microwave reward instead of a stove reward. We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, that's a great concept. Getting back into this plateau concept, tell us a little bit about the various forms of mental plateaus that you typically see, even as people are getting into what they feel is perfection, right? Because you have the level 1, level 2, level 3. What are the mental plateaus associated with those 3 levels?
Well, number one, in my line of work, people generally have a goal. and they have trouble meeting these goals by themselves. So they usually ask me for some type of aid or some type of, help or some support. So I said, sure, I'll help you any way that I can. What happens is a lot of people get discouraged with themselves simply because they haven't really taken the time out to be by themselves long enough to figure out, where am I mentally weak at and where am I mentally strong at? So they go into this journey, so to speak, without really an understanding of self. And what I mean by understanding of self, they've never taken enough time to be by themselves to figure out, what have I done wrong so I can correct myself and do right? So I try to generally give them an idea of.
So imagine that conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a fitness standpoint, what happens when you confront a client who then really wants to have that conversation? What have I done wrong to get to this point where I'm not feeling good physically? Is that an easy conversation to have? And what typically do you see a lot of people overcome the difficulty of that conversation with themselves?
Yeah, it starts off hard because this is usually what happens. 9 times out of 10, when we first start our first couple of sessions, I don't care who it is, from a celebrity client to a Parkinson's patient to an everyday, 9-to-5 worker. I said, the relationship that you have with the gym and yourself is a relationship that you have with other people and yourself. So I'll explain it this way. I'll tell them, okay, you want to have stronger looking arms. Take this weight and I need you to toss it, curl it, press it 1,000 times. And they'll get past maybe 20 and they'll get tired, they'll get exhausted, they get discouraged, obviously. Then I say, all right, let's go with some lighter weight and we'll toss it another 2,000 times. Of course, around 40 or 50, they get tired, they get discouraged. I'll repeat this cycle 4 or 5 times through the session. And what generally happens is they end up getting frustrated. They get mentally worn out or mentally stuck. They begin to doubt. Sometimes they begin to cry. And I said, well, what's the problem? They said, I'm getting tired too quickly. I know I can lift this weight. It's not that heavy. It's just I get tired and I feel like I want to give up on myself. I said, exactly. That's exactly what I want you to do. Start to really engage with yourself and say, I'm not a failure, but sometimes I have to fail to figure out where my success is at. So it requires you reaching deep down in yourself and figure out, how much can I do and how much can I not do? The things that you can't do doesn't mean, oh, I'm a failure at it. It's just, no, you haven't taken the time out to discipline yourself enough to be okay with stopping and going. This is the process of becoming better. You have to be able to say, look, I know I'm going to do the best that I can with what I have, but just because I can't finish the task at hand at the moment doesn't mean I'm a failure. I'll pick it up and try it again tomorrow, or try it next week, or the month after. It's a matter of consistency. And a lot of people don't understand discipline and self-control requires consistency. That's what you need. Without it, you'll fail at everything else. And discipline and self-control, consistency is generally uncomfortable for most people to deal with. So I said, we're going to start with the relationship that you have with these weights and yourself. How consistent can you be? Yeah. And how well you can be with it.
Yeah. Relationship between the gym, the weights, the action.
And yourself.
And yourself is the beginning of that fitness journey and how you think about it, right? So you have the plateauing concept, which we all mercilessly have experienced. You also have this concept of subcutaneous layers, right? The skin, the water, the fat, the muscle.
And the muscle.
You start this concept of building muscle, creating shape all around. You have the concept of consistency and being okay with disappointment. Let's talk about what this series is really about. You spent a lot of time talking to me in the past about core development. Let's help the audience understand what core is. Something that, you know, when I was growing up, you didn't hear it in the fitness world, right? It's something that I've been hearing more about in the last 10 to 15 years, just me. And I think a lot of people are still very confused about, is it abs? Is core development just having the six-pack abs? You know, which what I thought, but from talking to you, it doesn't seem like that's not the definition, right?
Nope. Core is center.
Yeah.
Think of an apple. Where's the center of an apple? Where's the seeds located on the apple? In the core, in the center.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to the anatomy of the body, we're talking about strength in the front, in the abdominal wall, and strength in the back, where your spine is. Those particular parts of the body, we call it the frontal plane and sagittal plane. Sagittal plane or transverse plane. Forgive me for not knowing that, knowing that all the way. But there's a front and there's a back. Mm-hmm. Your front, which is your abdominal wall, we're comprised of your abdominal wall, we call abs, is one thing. Then your back is another thing. Both of those areas on the body has to be strengthened in order for the core to be solid, your center. So let's get that corrected first. It's center. It's
got to be related to your sides and your hips. It's not just the front and the back, right? It's got to be just the core stability, the process of standing and walking that is driven by your core.
Yep.
That's got to be tremendously, Dinis. I'm assuming your mind is racing now in terms of.
So because you guys are much more advanced. So let me go back to basis. So I think let's look, well, for instance, I'm a bad example because I should do much more than I do physically, but let's look at very basics of finding your core, which I think we are finding your atom. And I think here is key as well to look at this. So from your experience, so we're talking about the concept of plateau and the idea of healthcare and fitness and working out the core, but as well identifying your core depends of, for instance, each person has kind of a body rhythm, and of course depends of your work hours, depends of your sleeping habits, and as well your psychological or even your personal living life can actually make a lot of changes. So from your experience, I'm particularly interested in your case, Andrew, from your experience as dealing with a lot of people, and some people very successful, other people less successful because you have as well social impact. What would be like the guidelines you give to people that are starting, or at least that are trying to keep a rhythm? Because I think one problem is not starting, is keeping it. So I would like to hear a bit that part, and as well how you make the balance between your physical and as well the core of your psychological and as well mental.
Okay, no problem. Let me make sure I word this correctly so I don't lose anybody. You have to start, I don't care where you are in life. If you're running a Fortune 500 company, or you're working a 9-to-5 job, you stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, how the best. I spend a lot of time with, for example, some of my clients who are producers or NFL players or professional fighters. Their job requires them to be demanding of their skill or their gift. Let's say 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day. So a lot of times they spend so much time perfecting their craft and doing, the best that they can, or giving the most of themselves to their careers or their craft. And they're spending minimal time in themselves or into themselves. And what I mean by that is this. If you spend 10 hours pouring into a company and the company pays you a good salary, you give you a bonus, you get all the perks, the rewards that come with putting 10 hours into the company. You go home, you shower up, take care of your kids if you have any, watch some television, cook dinner or whatnot, and go to bed. You get up, you do it again. You do that 7 days a week. After a month, 2 months, 3 months, eventually, mentally, spiritually, you start to figure out there's a lack, there's a void, because I'm spending so much time giving into somebody else or a company. I'm not giving enough to myself. So eventually the individual starts feeling empty. They start to question themselves, start to doubt their behavior. And a lot of times I meet people who are just overwhelmed with pleasing their audience, pleasing their coworkers, pleasing their employees, and they're not pleased with themselves. That's generally what I run into. So when I meet them, they say, like, I want to lose some weight, or I want to shape my body a little bit more. I want to get healthy. I said, okay, let's start with you. What makes you happy? And usually they can't answer the question. And I'm like, this is amazing. You're one of the greatest producers, one of the greatest athletes in this country, and you don't know what makes you happy. And that comes from spending too much time making other people happy. So I start with this. Let's figure out how we can spend an hour or 2 hours out of the day figuring out what makes you happy. Because if you don't know what makes you happy, I'm not going to say, hey, find out right now, figure it out. And it may take 2 hours or an hour out of the day, every day, until you figure out or find out what makes you happy. Then when we figure out or find out what makes you happy, let's hone in on how to keep yourself happy. That's where the consistency comes in. From there, it's just, all right, now that we figured out what makes you happy and how to keep you happy, let's understand this concept. Anything that you strive for, anything that you work for, anything that you discover or find has weight on it. So the question is, how good of shape are you in to keep up the weight? Got it? So if you say, for example, I want joy, I want peace in my life. I said, okay, joy is going to cost or weigh about 100 pounds. Peace is going to weigh about 50 pounds. Are your legs in shape? I'll just say this. Are your legs in good condition enough to hold joy and peace for the next 2 weeks? Some people don't know how to carry these virtues for long periods of time because they haven't been in the proper training. Make sense? I don't mean to go way off into the visual field or spiritual field, but it starts with the basic understanding of what is it that I want? What is it that I treasure? What is it that I reward? And do I have the mental, physical, and spiritual conditioning to keep it? That's the key.
The strength building.
Right.
The strength building. This, Dinis, you and I believe we covered this concept very briefly in previous podcasts, but this whole concept of people sometimes just treat inflammation, like they take the pill. Yes. They basically meditate just to reduce their stress, they calm themselves down, which is all very important. They lose water weight, reduction of inflammation. But if it's not coming side by side with the hard work, with the exertion, then that suppression of inflammation can only help you for so long, right? And I think what Andrew's talking about is the completeness of the hard work that's involved, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the thinking behind it, the feeling behind it, the core discipline behind what he's advocating for here.
Yeah, and I think that is the most difficult thing. I find it myself because as a creator and as a business person, I always sacrifice the physical, and I think it's, although I'm very disciplined in everything I do on the physical, I'm not as disciplined as I am in that part, and I really feel much better. But for instance, I know what makes me happy, but for instance, these other things that is about. So let me ask one question. I'm talking right now, probably from a personal level, is, for instance, if you identify, let's say, what makes you happy, but then your lifestyle and all the different things you have are quite complex, what would be the advice? And I think this is particularly important for people listening to us, because of course, I think both of you are in a level that we are not, at least me. And, but I want to be, actually, to be honest, is one of the things that is very important. And actually all the studies, for instance, close to finding a core is that taking care of yourself, of course, it's healthy, but extends your life and makes your life much healthier. And I think this is the problem, is that there's a kind of a, especially in societies, that we have an obsession to go extreme right in terms of not extreme right in the sense of right, but extreme in the sense of sports and fitness. But then, on the other hand, we have the other extremes. That is, of course, the fun and the extremes. So how you make that balance, especially with the kind of people that you're dealing with, but as well probably with people like myself that are doing too much and not focus enough on the physical, because it's like Amrita. I know Amrita is much more disciplined on this than me. I am in everything, but not on this, and definitely it's in my list of tasks.
Thanks for a great question. As you guys explained in my bio, or the introduction about my boxing career, I've never formally been trained in boxing. I never really had a coach. I never really had anybody groom me into the boxing sport. But I taught myself. One day I said, I'm on this extreme left of unhappiness. So I need to go into an extreme right in order that I can have some happiness, but I just don't know where to go. I need some support, I need some direction. And I couldn't find anybody to give me that direction and that support that I needed in regards to at least understanding the concepts of boxing. So I taught myself how to box with just some videos and what I thought I knew was the right way to box. So what I would do, I would train 6 to 7 hours a day, like a madman. Just whatever I knew about boxing, I would go into the gym, I would hit the bags, do pull-ups, do push-ups, do sparring, do weightlifting. I would do anything and everything in regards to being this boxer, finding my happiness, which I thought was in boxing, which was. And I always had this state of euphoria, this happiness every time I would hit that bag, and I would do my little abs and I could see my shape coming in. And it was just so thrilling to see the changes that I was making doing this extreme workout, 6 to 7 hours a day. However, I didn't understand the balance of a healthy life with nutrition. So I was eating bread and baby food and some eggs maybe once in a while. That's all I could afford. That's all. So I was training 6 to 7 hours a day and barely eating. But I didn't care. I was like, well, I'm on this mission to be this great looking boxer, and I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I did that for weeks and months on end. No balance, just going from extreme left to extreme right. Until one day, I got terribly sick, very, very sick. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have this condition called rhabdomyolysis. And I said, what's rhabdomyolysis? He said, it's a condition where your body starts eating at itself. So I was chiseled, I was buff, I was just strong looking, but I had this huge stomach like I was pregnant. And it was just my belly was overrun with fluid around my pancreas and my spleen and my kidneys as well. So the doctor said, you can do two things. You can keep doing what you love to do and make you happy, and you can die, or you can stop doing what you're doing and live. So I had to make a decision. I said, well, how do I just stop doing what I do? I found this new love in boxing and training and working out, just obsessive, and it's killing me. So how do I go from one extreme to the next without losing myself? So I had to make a decision. You need balance, Andrew, but how do you balance the extreme left to the extreme right when you've already went extreme right and it's got you the joy and the peace and happiness that you have?
That goes back to your core analysis.
Your core. Now it's like, how do I center myself? So I said, this is what I'll do. I'll go back to what's most important, not the workout, not the physical activity, not necessarily the joy or the happiness or the euphoric state that boxing and working out gives me, but the core issue is my health. What do I need to do in regards to nutrition? I need healing first on the inside, so on the outside it'll shape itself out, it'll work itself together. So I had to teach myself about how to properly eat. So it started off with basics. Eat breakfast first thing in the morning. You'd be surprised, Dinis, how many people skip breakfast. It's amazing. I've talked to these clients and I said, you want to lose weight and you're skipping breakfast? Think about it. You go to bed at 9 o'clock. You have your last meal at 7. You go 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. That's 5 hours already. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. We're already at 11. We're already at 11 hours and you're waking up going to work. You skip breakfast. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. You finally eat your first meal at 12 in the afternoon on your lunch break. You've just missed out on 17 hours of food, of nothing. No food for 17 hours. Your body's going to do this first. I'm going to store fat because you're not feeding me on anything. You're not putting anything on my body. So since you want to skip hours of no food, I'll just start storing fat. Once you start getting a habit of storing fat because you don't have any appetite in the morning, you find yourself saying, well, I'm lethargic, I don't have any energy, I don't have any motivation or enthusiasm to do anything for myself. So it starts trickling into your mental capacity. So not to go too far on the left or too far to the right, because I'll stay on this all day. It starts with the basics of having a foundation of what's important for you in your life. Your health is number one. Where do I start eating, thinking, and living healthily? That's the key. And that's different based upon every individual. What's healthy for, I have clients who are vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian or vegan. So what's healthy for them may not necessarily work for me. I may start with, something more simple with a little bit of meat. But regardless of the vegetarian diet or the meat diet, make sure the diet is in harmony with the kind of health or the lifestyle that you're trying to achieve or accomplish.
It's always back to that core, isn't it, Dinis?
Yeah, and I like that the way you put it, the holistic part as all of that. So coming back, sorry, I want to touch this. So from, let's say, identifying that core and getting to that basis between, of course, nutrition, food, and self-discipline to face this, because you need to have a strong self-discipline. How do you then get the plateaus? Because I think the plateaus should come after you get this right. It's the question. I think it's because you went directly to the plateaus, but I would like to go by the story or by the roadmap. Yeah.
You're saying once you've achieved some reasonable excellence at these various areas, why do plateaus still happen?
Plateaus, we'll go back to the first part of the conversation. You found yourself getting better and better and better and more skilled at whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Weight loss. So say your goal is, I want to lose 15 pounds. So you've been eating right, exercising right for the past 4 to 6 weeks. And if your goal is 20, after the 5th week, you've only lost 10. So you say, well, what happened? I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, but I can't get over this hump or this wall. So it happens because there's something generally you're not either doing more of, or you may need to be doing less of. And when I say less of, it's generally the kicker with people who want to lose weight. When they're plateauing, I can't seem to get over this hump. I can't either lose the weight like I need to. I'm looking at a client right now. I'm sorry for looking at this. I'm looking at this client and I have this conversation about the plateau. I told this young lady, how often are you actually getting sleep? And she was like, I don't know, maybe 5 hours. I said, 5 hours? Oh, no. And she was working out 6 days a week. I mean, eating right, exercising 6 days a week. Sometimes she'll do 2 a days. 2 a days is where she'll work out in the morning and she'll work out in the evening on the same day. She was just really enthusiastic about getting this weight down. And she got it down, but she couldn't meet her goal. And I told her, I said, if you're only getting 5 hours of rest, how do you think your body is going to really recover? That's the key. Recovery is another thing. So I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to not work out for at least a week. So take those 2 hours that you would normally do at the gym and just go home and rest. Don't do anything. She wanted to fight me. I said, look, don't fight me. Just try it out and see what happens. We did that for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. She came back. She went back to the gym, got back on her diet, and she lost an extra 8 pounds just from getting rest.
Amazing.
Just from getting rest. So it goes back to into the segue I was saying about most people investing so much time into their business, into their employees, into their jobs, into their families, that they're not taking enough time to invest in themselves. And that's just basic rest, recovery, spending time 1 hour, 2 hours at a time, really just resting the mind, resting the spirit, resting the body. This is why they have these plateaus. They're not taking an initiative to rest the body like it should. So if you find yourself hitting a wall, take the time out to rest, recover. You'd be surprised what your body can come up with just not doing anything. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're missing out on anything. It doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. It doesn't mean that you're being lazy or what's the other word? Procrastinating. Yeah, procrastinating. It's just, I'm going to use wisdom this time. I'm going to just take some time out, relax, rest, see what my body can come up with just standing still for a second. Standing still.
So, Andrew, let's fast forward a little bit. Let's take it seems like it happens equally now with men and women.
Mm-hmm.
But you do all this stuff. You rest. You've got your core, you've got your strength building, you've got your fitness routine, your beauty routine, your nutrition routine. And then from time, we come across people that have a very strong self-image. We have a very strong self-view, right? They have a very clear idea of what they want to look like, their concept of beauty that may or not fit with a magazine. They know it, right? They want the abs, they want the butt, they want the hair, they want all of it, right? Where do you then start to see, and I see it all the time, people just all around Los Angeles, where do you then start to see the human suffering? And because you and I did talk about this in our conversation, is there's that point with certain people, certain experiences, I wouldn't even say people, certain experiences where you have such a strong position in your mind about what that, me, it, all of it needs to be. And it has no bearing with the reality.
Right.
For instance, I will never be a football player.
Let's
get that straight, right? That's an extreme example, but let's talk about that for a second, where you see that human suffering and how, and not that we can avoid it, but then let's recognize it.
Mm-hmm. The human suffering comes from not being satisfied with self. Most people spend majority of their time looking at other people's lives and saying, I want that. I want to look like that. I want to sound like that. I want to make money like that. I want to be able to function and be powerful and influential and admired like that. Instead of saying, I want to be the best version of myself. And that requires looking within yourself to figure out, how do I best serve myself? So alternatively, you got to spend more time with self, because what happens is we have social media, we have television, we have anything and everything that's generally distracting us. It's all a big distraction. It's distracting us from inner beauty, looking into the mirror and saying, what do I have to contribute to me? And a lot of times people don't even know that they're their best investment. So they don't have anything to contribute to. Once you don't know what you're investing, or excuse me, you don't know, I just say value. We're looking at it like that. A lot of people just don't understand their value. So they give up themselves. They give too much of themselves. What I mean by that, I try to encourage women when they go on dates. I say, women are the best savers, but they're not the best investors. You should see the frowns I get when I say that. So my young friends, my female friends are like, why would you say such a thing? I said, women are great with taking care of money. So think about emotions as your bank account. I said, I try to encourage my female friends, when you go out on dates, think about your emotional and spiritual bank account, and then watch how you spend. So they're like, what? I don't get it. So I go into these examples of how to spend yourself emotionally when you're dealing with the opposite sex or with your relationship to whatever. Most women, since they're very nurturing, like to overspend. I said, this is where we're going to have some trouble. And what comes with a person who overspends? They don't understand what they have in their emotional or spiritual bank account. So they have the tendency to give too much to other people instead of really investing back in themselves, or just they've never been taught properly how to spend on other people. Emotionally, we can say it that way. So what happens is when you start honing in on different areas of life or lifestyle, whatnot, you get really distracted or miseducated about what's more important in regards to what I contribute to myself before I start contributing to others. And I didn't mean to go all the way left or right, but a lot of people just generally don't understand self-value. So they generally overspend themselves emotionally. They start to look outside of themselves or look at external factors of the world and say, I want to copy, I want to look at that. Then they become miserable, they begin to doubt. And then the next phase comes in, self-pity. That's like soul suicide.
Self-pity.
I walk around, yeah, it's deep. So
Dinis, did you catch that? Self-pity is soul suicide. That's going to be the headline.
Yeah, that's a very powerful one, actually. And it's true. It's true. It's actually a slow suicide, because it's even worse. Yeah.
It's slow suicide is worse. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I could dwell in it. I could dwell in this for a long time.
Dinis and I have spent a lot of time in this series talking about a few very, like everyday concepts, right? Finding yourself, finding your atomic particle. We also touched a lot on this concept of distraction, right? Is in our previous podcast, we had Katie Dinis, who really, we got into those topics of, okay, social media, just technology. To what point does it just hit you like a bunch of bullets, right? Where now I'm going back several podcasts, where then you start having all these different fantasies, right? Tying it all together. You have this, you've done the work, okay? Imagine this person, you've done the work, you've worked out, like I said, beauty, nutrition, fitness, everything. You've created these amazing concepts of yourself, these fantasies. You want to do so much, fantasies start becoming polka dots, right? So many fantasies that they're polka dots. All of a sudden, you've got like hundreds and thousands of polka dots.
Billion polka dots.
And it's noise. The polka dots have quickly become noise. And the noise quickly becomes cacophony. And the cacophony then becomes human suffering. And pretty soon that very core that you were so focused on developing in those concepts of self just became particles, right? So it is so easy to happen. It happens to me all the time. It takes, I could tell you, like I try to stay fit. I try to do all those things, but the constant fight against the cacophony is real. It is real. And I know I'm not the only one, right? I know I'm out there with a lot of people. it's this constant fight of just, oh, this or that or this, and I could be all this stuff, right? It's
overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. There has got to be some way in which there is a sustainable gravitational pull back to what a person really is and what consciousness really is what is your complete consciousness. There has to be a robust gravitational pull where you can think about what you have. Right? I'm here. Like, what do we got? What do we have? What are we working with here? Right?
What are we working with?
What are we working with here? And I know, like, I've seen you when in training is, all right, fellows, and then gals, what are we working with here? What do you got? And that's one of the first things I hear you talking about at the gym. It's, what's our situation right now? What is actually happening? What's actually happening? And then how do we become the best version of what is actually happening, not the fantasy of what could be happening?
Right. What is that?
Not the Harry Potter, the reality.
What are we aiming for?
Yeah. So, Dinis, I hope I try to wrap these things up in a nice bow for you.
No, I love it. And I think this is what I like here is that you go into the nitty-gritty, because a lot of the success of these things is about looking at the details. And actually, I love the word deconstructing the topics. I think we're deconstructing the methodology, the process, but as well the way we go through the different concepts. And as well, I love the working out the core, because in the end of the day, this is kind of probably one of the most important things. For instance, it's interesting because I've been, in the last actually couple of years, I became very obsessed with life extension. And one of the things that I'm looking is at first of all, actually, I was actually working with companies that are looking at life extension. And actually, I even had one company getting investment from my side. But one of the things that I saw, if you look at, for instance, in all the world, the villages, they have more quantity of people with more than 100 years old. There's multiple elements, but probably you can synthesize some of the elements in what we're talking in this conversation. Is a consideration for your kind of a natural identification of the core, but on a day-to-day basis. So there's a kind of a continuation if you use the plateau concept, not as sophisticated as what we're discussing here, but all the villages and locations where actually have more people in percentage, they actually walk a lot. They do a lot of physical activity, not the way we're talking here, but at the same time, they have very good balance between first of all, the food and the lifestyle. And then there's another part that I want to touch here, that is the mental well-being. But the way they touch the mental well-being is actually quite interesting. Is actually not with conscious about most of these things, because if you look at Japan or even Italy, where actually we have some of the people living older in the planet, at least percentage of people with more life, it's mostly on the balance of the food and the community around them. So it touches to what you said, Andrew, in the sense that self-pity or self-sustainable, kind of a sense of community, sense of being part of something bigger than them, but at the same time, sense that you have people around you. So I want to touch this because I know that we didn't touch so much the well-being part, although you touched the self-pity, self-suicide, which I think it's a big one, and I think you should.
That's the next podcast.
Yes, it's really very powerful, because it's actually, for instance, if you look at people, whatever the age, but for instance, I see my father and my mother, and my father is a bit this self-pity, self-suicide, because he's kind of not taking care of himself psychological, or at least letting things down. And I think this is the biggest challenge as well that we have to face. For instance, I don't have that problem with myself, but I think sometimes I have the problem of the discipline and the problem of creating the habits. So how do you, especially on this part of more the mental well-being and the people that you've been coaching, because you've been coaching high-profile people and communities. I know that the communities have a sense, when you're being part of a community, normally you have some kind of backup. Okay, there's always extremes, but the community actually gives you some balance, some sustainability on that level. From that work that you've been doing, Andrew, is there anything you want to share with us? Because I think this is, for me, one of the biggest things, the sense of tribe, the sense of community that we're losing with our modern technological very successful world, but at the same time very fragmented.
Yeah, correct. So when I've taught, I've taught over maybe 5,000 to 6,000 classes, particularly with the sport of boxing. I've taught in Beverly Hills to affluent communities and to underprivileged communities all the way in the ghettos of Compton and South Central. When I'm teaching, I try to hone in on the importance of establishing a community. I may have 5 people, I may have 50 people come into class, you know, periodically at a time. Whether it be 5 or 50, I remind everyone we're here for one goal, and that's to get better. I don't know if it's to get better at being a better individual, a better wife, a better husband, a better family man, a better employee. Let's figure out how we can get better as people. However, this boxing journey that I'm going to take you on is a reminder that you're going to have to fight in order to get better. So if it's joy, if it's peace, if it's a virtue such as self-control or discipline, we all need to support each other in regards to achieving that goal. So let's fight for this. So it's generally a whole hour of just swinging and laughing and sweating and pumping and jumping. And at the end of the class session, I try to give a motivational and inspirational piece on the importance of community, striving for what you want. And a lot of times we may not have the community backup that we're looking for, but if the community is not always there to back you up, look within yourself and say, I'm going to be the community for myself today. So the joy is in there. And if the joy is right in you, pull it on out. The peace, the stability, the gentleness, the poise, the love, the whatever virtues or success that you're looking for, it's within you. Just pull it on out of you. So the community aspect is one thing. It's great, but I don't know, man. These days and times, I'm starting to see, well, particularly in our country, I'm starting to see less and less of that community factor. Yeah. And a lot of people are left doing things on their own. And it's so difficult and so hard to see, because generally people want to have somebody there supporting them to the top, or supporting them and getting to one goal to the next. But we're such a narcissistic, individualistic society. It's hard to watch, man. I didn't mean to go down that road, but I had to be honest with you.
But you know what?
Go ahead, Amrita.
We can fix it.
Yeah, we can.
Fix it. A lot of it is just redefining what a community is, which we're doing right now. We're doing that right now. I mean, Dinis is in Europe. Yeah. Right?
Right.
And actually, it's been part of this community. Actually, this podcast for me is actually a very wonderful moment, because I've been thinking about all these things. And actually, well, first of all, right now is remembering me how important I need to take care of my physics, because at first I was telling, well, Amrita knows I was traveling in the other side of the world, and I actually just walked for 2 hours and I felt so good. But the point is that I don't put the discipline to do that, and I work the hours that I work. But I think in my case is because I'm so motivated that I forgot the physical part, and then of course that impacts the rest. But I think this is really important. But the sense of community is really key, because, for instance, right now we have people around the world, and you mentioned the community where you actually go and you coach or you educate or you do training. But these communities are really important. And actually, right now, probably my question for you, and as well, we're passing 1 hour, so I think we can still go a bit more. But I'll let you, Andrew, see how much you can go. But I think the sense is this sense of community. So there's the linear sense of community and the virtual sense of community. Mm-hmm. So from how do you cope with this, especially in a post-COVID or still COVID environment that we are all going through? Because this is actually quite complex, is that we have our family and friends all over the world. We have our communities local. And in my case, I have to say I'm a bit schizophrenic, not in a bad way, but in very fragmented sometimes the way I look at all these things. But I would like to hear from you purely from a coaching perspective and training perspective, because these are very important details, and the devil is on details.
This is the best way to answer that. Find an accountability partner or partners. So since we haven't been really able in the past couple of years because of COVID to physically hang out and touch and commune with each other, I try to encourage people, including myself, find an accountability partner or accountability partners that you can share, love, and support. For example, support with. I have a friend who I call Joy. I know when I call him, he's going to give me some joy. He calls me peace. So when he calls me, I give him peace. I have another friend who I call Sunshine. And he when I call him, he gives me sunshine. So a lot of times we'll call each other up randomly and I'm like, hey man, I need some joy today. I'm not feeling well. He said, okay, and we'll talk and we'll talk about some stuff and, have a good couple of laughs. But the energy that he creates just by talking with them, it's I don't even know how to describe joy. His name is David, but he knows what he's able to bring to the table. He's like, if I don't have peace, I know people can depend on me to bring joy. So he's the joy caller. I know sometimes I can't bring joy, but hey, I know I can give you some peace when you talk to me. So people depend on me to give them their peace. So however you can contribute to the community or the family or your partners, contribute. You just got to find the right people who are willing to contribute. That's all. So
Dinis,
go ahead.
So I'm trying to think like what is Dinis to me? Because he's my partner, right?
Right. So what do you have to offer, Dinis?
I love that. I love that actually.
I think for me, Dinis is hope.
I like it.
Yeah, and I think for me, Amrita is the balance between my creative side and my spiritual and as well the business, which actually three areas that sometimes I compartment or fragment. So actually it's a balance. Actually, I love, actually, it's very good. Actually, we're doing.
You're hope, I'm balance, and Andrew is peace. Okay, I got another idea.
I love it.
Everybody should have that one word. It has to be a positive one word, but everybody should try to represent that one word that they are for somebody else. Because sometimes I'm balanced for you, Dinis, but I am I'm excitement for other people.
Of course.
Right?
Well, you're a creator as well. Yeah.
So yeah, and then you could have for other people, you can be creative, so that the one word definitions sometimes may be limiting, but they're not bad in terms of building the core and the core's relationship with the community.
Right. You got to know who you are first. Yeah. And then, figure out what you're good. Figure out what you're good at first, and then you can figure out what you're great at second.
Yeah.
But just figure out what you're good at. That means just get on the inside of you. Say, what can I contribute to others? And what can I contribute to myself? If it's strength, just be strength.
I know already what I'm really good at doing. I do. And it's not going to be something that you're expecting. I know that I'm a really good sister. Like really, really good sister. Like whoever, aside from my own little brother, I have a best friend who lives in Dallas. And I just know that this one thing that I do, which is to be a good sister, no one can do better than me. So I think the opening up the definitions sometimes is really helpful.
Really helps.
And you get out of that self-pity thing pretty quickly when you open up the definition a little bit more broadly. So well, I am truly ending this podcast on a high note, Andrew. I feel like you've given.
That's it? Oh man. Oh man.
Well, I think I almost feel like
having so much fun.
with Andrew, it's almost like we could write a book, and I so.
No, yeah, this is very.
Just to give you the intention behind having you as a guest, Andrew, what Dinis and I talk a lot about is we talk a lot about work balance. We talk a lot about concepts of Buddha and philosophy and history. We've covered a lot of decent ground with different people. What I asserted with Dinis a few weeks ago is fitness. It's such a big part of my life. We should always have a regular check-in with each other and with our audience about fitness, the physical, right? So as many times, if we have to do it once every 3 weeks or once every 4 weeks, you know, we should always have a fitness check-in. Because, you know, so I guess you're our fitness check-in. Just to see if we're eating right.
Are you taking care of you? Are you eating right outside of you eating right? Are you thinking right? Are you loving right? Are you supporting right?
Yeah. So this is the beginning of many different check-ins with you, I would say.
I'm all here. Oh yeah, my phone's on.
No, this is very special. I appreciate both of you, and I like the way you're putting the balance in the sense of looking at first of all the quietness. How do you test this? Because I'm probably too frenetic. Wish I need to calm down more and go down to earth. But as all the details of the process, and I think, like you said, to wrap up some of the quotes of the session, we're going to put this as well in the notes. It's really important that you find the core, okay? And the finding the core is actually, okay, this is a podcast about finding your atom, but I think here finding the core is a key element, because I think the way you look at yourself, the way you manage the balance of these things is a key element for successful, but as well to make a great life. And I think that's, in the end of the day, what matters for every one of us.
Make a good life. Yeah.
Slow down before we leave with that. Slow down to see where you're headed. Don't be in a rush. I try to encourage people to hone in on that. You gotta slow down before you miss your stop. If you slow things down, you'll see, oh, this is where I'm inadequate at. Well, this is what I'm adequate in. But if you slow down just a little bit enough, calm down, you'd be surprised what kind of revelatory experiences you have by just taking the time up to slow down. You're not gonna miss anything. I encourage the viewers and listeners right now, you won't miss a thing. Slow down just to see where you're at.
I really think that was meant for you and me.
Special for me, yes.
I felt some energy coming out of here. I was like, I think I need to say this real quick.
All right, well, let's wrap it, and then we'll see each other later, very soon.
Thank you so much, Dinis. It's an honor to meet you. Amrita, I'll see you.
See you later, man.
Thank you, Andrew.
Appreciate you, sir.
Slowing down. Thank you
Yes,
so much. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.